Hello there, my name's Scott. Today I'm going to be doing a review on the Somnium Rebuildable Atomiser, which I received from www.somnium-mods.com, who are based in Finland. Before I start, I must point out I did receive it free of charge for the purpose of conducting a review. My opinion of the product remains true, honest and accurate as always. Okay, let's go straight ahead and show you what's in the box. Okay, so the Somnium Atomiser comes in a nice little presentation box. And when you take off the lid, inside you're going to find the atomiser. And that is pretty much all you get. You're just getting the atomiser and a nice little box. Okay, so the Somnium Rebuildable Atomiser is pretty much all made out of stainless steel, with the exception of the two O-rings, the tank and the brass centre pin now. Uses a 510 threading, so that means you can use the Somnium on any device that also has a 510 atomiser connection. The top cap has a pretty large 1.5mm air hole. The tank is made out of Pyrex glass and holds around 3ml of e-liquid. If I take off the top cap, inside you can see that there's quite a large wick hole, which is 2.8mm, and that's with insulation in there. So you can actually make the hole bigger by removing the insulation, and I believe then it measures at 3.5mm. But you know, 2.8, you know, it's a pretty good wick size for me personally anyway. And you've got the insulation there, so it makes it that little bit easier to set up. Held quite firmly in place by these two large O-rings as well, and you know, once the top cap is on there, you know, it really does stay in place nicely. Okay, so what I'll do now then is quickly get a mesh set up and wrap a coil, and show you in action. Okay, so I've already oxidised my stainless steel mesh wick, and this is a piece of 400 which I cut at a size of 40mm long by 30mm wide, and I've not rolled it up too tightly, so I want a fairly sort of chunky wick in there. The positive and the negative terminals on the Somnium are designed so you don't need to use any sort of screwdrivers or hex keys, and just to get them ready for accepting the wire, I'm just going to loosen them off. Now normally I would insert the wick inside the tank first and then attach my wire to the negative terminal, which is the shorter one here. And incidentally I'm using some 0.20 gauge Canthal wire. However, I do find that with the wick in place it makes grabbing hold of the post quite difficult with your fingers to actually get a good enough grip to be able to tighten it up. So what I do is I just attach the wire to the negative first and then add the wick afterwards. So I'm just going to hold the wire in place, go underneath the little terminal screw, hold it in place again, and then just tighten it up. Okay, so I've just inserted the wick inside the tank. I'm going to try and make sure it doesn't touch the bottom, because it just makes it a little bit easier when it comes to setup. So now I'm going to wrap sort of 3 or 4 coils around the wick, and then just finish off in between this little gap, and then tighten it up. And then once it's in place, you can just make it look a little bit more presentable afterwards. And then you can just remove the excess wire by just applying a bit of tension and giving it a spin. And then after that you can attach it to whatever device you're going to be using, and just give it a little bit of a test fire just to make sure all the coils are lighting up evenly and at the same time. And as far as I can tell in this light, they do seem to be okay. So now the wick and coil are all set up, I can just fill the tank up with some e-liquid. I'm just going to fill it up with some tobacco flavoured juice. A few seconds for the capillary reaction to start working. Hopefully we'll start seeing a bit of vapour. That's it. All good. And then for the next step, you just need to add the top cap. And when doing so, just make sure that you line the air hole up directly in front of the wick, and that'll make sure you get the most amount of vapour. And finish off by adding your 510 drip tip, and you're all good to go. Okay, so that is the Somnium Rebuildable Atomiser. Let's go ahead and see what it vapes like. Okay, so that was the Somnium, and what I'll do now is go ahead and show you in action. So I'm going to be using it on my Mini Pro Vary, which is currently set at 3.8 volts. The resistance of the coil is reading 1.6 ohms, and the tank has been filled up with some 18 milligram strength tobacco flavoured e-liquid. It's just a PG based e-liquid. As you can see, like vape wise, you're getting plenty of vapour out of it. You have to bear in mind though, that the amount of vapour you're going to get will be fairly dependent on your own sort of personal setup with regards to what resistance the coil is, what sort of voltage or wattage you're using, whether you're using a PG based e-liquid or a VG based e-liquid, etc, etc. But no, with the setup I've got here, getting plenty of vapour. Throat heat wise, get a nice strong kick in the back of my throat. And when it comes to the flavour, you know, it's on par with any other sort of Genesis atomiser. As long as the coil has been set up correctly, you haven't got any sort of hot spots, you only get plenty of flavour come through. If you are getting hot spots in that, then obviously there's not even really much point sort of vaping it, because you are going to get very nasty sort of burnt metallic taste. So just make sure that all your coils are lighting up evenly and lighting up at the same time, and that's your indication it's all set up correctly, and you know, you should get plenty of flavour come through. The actual warmth of the vapour, you know, it's not hot, but it's definitely not sort of freezing cold either. You know, you have got that quite large sort of air hole, which is obviously cooling down the vapour a little bit more as well. And it will, to a certain extent, be quite dependent again on your own sort of personal setup with regards to what sort of voltage, wattage, and the resistance, etc. Because obviously they will create a hotter or a cooler coil. But the way that I've been setting it up, I would say that, say for example, 1 is a really cold vape and 5 is a really hot vape. It's probably around a 2, it's sort of a warmish sort of vape really. That's just the way that I've got it set up here anyway. When it comes to the actual sort of draw on it, it's again, because that quite large air hole, it's not going to be like a tight draw. So if you like a really nice tight draw, probably not the one for you. But it doesn't seem to be overly airy draw. I mean, like I said, it's quite a big old air hole on it. But I suppose if 1 was a really loose draw and 5 was a really tight draw, I suppose it's probably going to be around like the 2 mark, something like this. You know, it's a pretty loose draw, isn't it? Ease of setup. The first time I tried setting mine up, you know, I was having a few problems, like with hot spots. But it's nothing to do with the actual atomiser, it's due to my own laziness basically, because I just sort of half oxidised the wick, hoping that would be all right, put it in there, obviously I started getting hot spots, spent about, I don't know, 20 minutes, half hour, you know, nudging the coils and had to try and sort of move it away from the like the problem area. And in the end I just thought, sod it, you know, let's just take it out, put it in the old burner for another sort of 10 seconds or so, put it back in, and that was it, you know, fired up straight away perfectly like the first time. So, you know, it is a case of, as long as your wick is nicely oxidised, then you won't get any problems. If it's not nicely oxidised, then chances are you will get problems. So, you know, as long as you're not being lazy like what I was the initial time I tried to set it up, I would say, you know, it's a fairly easy one to do really. If I was going to say that 1 was really hard And if I was going to say 1 was really easy and 5 was really hard, then I'll probably put it around the sort of 2 mark, something like that. Now there is something that sort of springs to mind though, like the Somnium is almost a carbon copy of the Cobra atomizer. Like it's only really aesthetics, a few little sort of dimples and that which you have on the Cobra, which sort of separate it really. Everything else looks very, very similar. And one thing that I do get is a lot of messages from beginners who have got the Cobra and having a lot of problems with hotspots. And it is one of those atomizers that can be a real pain in the arse sometimes. And as this one is very, very similar, I'm almost half expecting to start getting a few emails with this one as well. However, though, there's one big difference between this and the Cobra, and that is this one has the little insulation piece going down the wick hole, which really does greatly help when it comes to setting these things up. So I'm hoping that from a beginner's point of view, they won't struggle too much because of that insulator there, because it, like I say, it really does help a lot when it comes to setting it up without getting any sort of hot spots and that. But it is something that did spring to my mind though anyway. Build quality wise, can't really fault it. All the machining on it seems to be very nicely done. There's no sort of burrs or little rough edges or anything like that. All the parts go together nicely. The actual finish of the stainless steel is really nice as well. So it's like a brushed sort of metal, I suppose, something like that. It feels, if you run your fingernail down it, you can feel sort of slight little grooves, but you can't particularly see them. They're not sort of thick, deep grooves. Just a very nice sort of looking atomizer. I suppose negative wise, on a personal note, nothing to do with the actual atomizer as such, is that I do tend to prefer the shorter and fatter Genesis atomizers now, just because they tend to look a lot nicer when you're using it on things like the roller or the GP patch. Your 22mm wider atomizers and devices just seem to go together really nicely. It looks okay on the Pro Vari, but again, it's just I prefer to have it a little bit shorter and a little bit fatter. Because although the Pro Vari still gets a lot of use out of me, I do tend to mainly stick to the mechanical mods the last sort of few months now really, just because I like that all-in-one sort of hybrid sort of style look to it. Only other slight negative would be, like I said, it is very, very similar to the Cobra atomizer, apart from a few little sort of aesthetic changes and that little insulation piece. And, so there's not a lot of sort of new ideas coming to the table, but, the actual atomizer itself, very nicely machined atomizer, it vapes great, no problems there whatsoever at all. Not a great deal else I can tell you, should I say. If you fancy trying one out for yourself, go along to www.somnium-mods.com. Thank you very much for watching. Also come along and visit my website at www.e-cig-reviews.com. It's e-cig-reviews.com. Cheers guys, happy vaping. See you later.